Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest Creative Commons training webinar. My name is Jenny Parks, and I'm the Vice President of Policy and Research at the Midwestern Higher Education Compact. We love to do this about once a quarter to show you the wonderful things that can happen when you get certified after taking the Creative Commons training. So today, I will just give you a few housekeeping tips, and then we'll get started. First of all, any of the resources that we mention or have will be posted to the MEC website, and keep an eye in the chat. We'll put helpful links there as well. You can engage in conversation with with colleagues in the chat, but if you have a question for the presenters, please put that in the Q&A section, and we will answer those questions at the end. And also, take a look in your email inbox when you're done. We will send out a survey and ask you how we did. We'd love to hear from you because we just want to keep doing better and better. So thank you very much for your help with that. We're going to move on. I'm going to introduce first Jennryn Wetzler. She is the Director of Learning and Training for Creative Commons. And we will be hearing today also from Cindy Kristof, the Copyright and Scholarly Communication Librarian from Kent State University Libraries. So thank you so much. This is a recorded presentation, and you can find it on the MEC website in a few days. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Jennryn.
All right, thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to get to work with MEC colleagues, and we love having the chance to tell people about our certificate training program from Creative Commons. So those of you who are not familiar with Creative Commons, let me just go right to the logo. We are a global nonprofit. We've been around for about 22 years, and we are best known for our open licenses that have become the global standard for open copyright licenses that have been applied to over 2.5 billion licensed works online to date. So these are tools that help creators better, more flexibly share their works, whether they are educational materials, whether they are images on Flickr, or different syllabi or PowerPoints or videos or music or otherwise. They are tools to allow creators to kind of unbundle the traditional all rights reserved copyright permissions that are withheld for the creators, and share those permissions with public users, so downstream users of the resources. So we are thrilled to not just focus on the licenses and steward them, but also work on these different capacity building efforts, such as the CC certificate program. So the certificate program is our key training program. It is a 10-week online course or a 1-week in-person boot camp. We offer it every January, June, and September. And it is it's an intensive learning experience, as you'll hear in a minute. It provides folks with a general basis in copyright and limitations and exceptions to copyright in the public domain. It also looks at other considerations adjacent to copyright. Then we get into the licenses, how to use them, how to CC license your own work, and how to think through the different considerations around reuse of other CC licensed materials. And then finally, it starts to get into some of the considerations around open advocacy. So what you can do to further open access to knowledge and information in your institutions. So we apply an open pedagogy approach to our lessons. We aim to have people create works that are useful to them in their day jobs or to their larger communities. So rather than just having sort of homework that they just use within the parameters of the course, we encourage people to take advantage of the flexibilities and create something that's as useful to them and their colleagues and community members as possible. Our courses are about 6 to 10 hours of work per week, according to participant surveys. Some people spend more time, some people spend less time. We try to offer some flexibility there. So they are a significant time commitment. We have expert facilitators around the world who engage with participants through the Canvas discussions and in chats. And we generally have about a 25-to-1 participant to facilitator ratio. Other than that, in the courses, you also gain access to copyright lawyers, which is not cheap outside of the courses, to open advocates, accessibility coaches, various experts are in the domains that touch our kind of global shared commons. So one of the most recent domains that we've been bringing in experts for is around AI and the commons. But we keep looking for different areas of expertise to draw from for our optional webinars. All of the homework is asynchronous, but we do offer these synchronous discussion options that are really a great part of the courses. Okay, so the reason I'm here is to just first thank MEC for our continued partnership that allows for a 15% discount to MEC colleagues or anyone affiliated with the MEC communities. And this is a way to hopefully incentivize more academic librarians, more faculty and educators, more instructional designers, college administrators, and so on. Anyone is welcome to join our certificate courses, but we are hoping to specifically incentivize more higher ed faculty and staff to engage in open licensing educational expertise. Okay, so to access the 15% discount, all you have to do is click on our registration link. So I think it's chat, but I'm going to make sure we have, let me see. Yes, thank you so much for already posting it. I didn't need to do this, but there we are. All you have to do is click on the link, and then when you get to registration, type in MEC 15. If you don't see the price drop by 15%, then don't complete your registration. So it should be very simple. You should be able to access it at any time, but if you run into any difficulties, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So you can contact us at certificates@creativecommons.org. Okay, I'm going to zip it so I can introduce our current alum that we want to highlight right now, and then I'll give it right over to her to share more about her experience in the certificate, and then also what she's done since then. So we're so glad to welcome Cindy Kristof. Cindy Kristof serves as the Associate Professor, Copyright and Scholarly Communication Librarians, and Subject Librarian for Communication Studies, Media, and Journalism at Kent State University's University Libraries. Her job responsibilities include copyright education, open access advocacy, and coordination of the library's OER and affordable learning initiatives. So thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Well, thank you for having me, Jennryn. Thank you for, I'm really excited to be here. I can't say enough good things about this program. It was really something I'm glad I did. I will say, and you can go on to the next slide. My background is a librarian. I started off in access services, and I worked in interlibrary loan and document delivery and with course reserves and developing an e-reserves program some years ago. So I had some footing in copyright. I didn't necessarily love copyright when I first started with it. I thought it was a bother, especially with an interlibrary loan and Contu guidelines. But I got sent to numerous copyright workshops over the years, and that's how I got to know it. I got to be conversant in it. It took a while. And then I remember in the mid 90s, there was the Confu kind of conference on fair use that attempted to come up with guidelines, which were largely superseded then by best practices. But I've lived through all that. And, I've lived through some things like talking to people who were against electronic delivery of documents and interlibrary loan. So I feel like I've gotten to see the progression of how copyright has worked with libraries over the years. I thought about law school for a little bit, and then I decided, nope, not going to do that. But I continued to try to do a lot of continuing education. And so I've been in copyright services, partially in scholarly communication. I work with the institutional repository. And like Jennryn said, I work with open educational resources too. We have a grant program. So I've really tried to arm myself with a lot of certificate programs. And I think the first one that I took was the Copyright for Educators and Librarians, which is with Kevin Smith and Ann Gilliland. And I can't remember the other person's name right now. Forgive me, please. Lisa Macklin. Anyway, that one was over Coursera. They gave another one over a bet that was about multimedia a little bit later on. So I got both of those certificates, and then I took Copyright X through Harvard, which was a whole different approach. So I thought that I really knew things. I had read a lot of copyright books cover to cover, particularly Kenny Cruz's Copyright Law for Librarians and Educators, now in its fourth edition. So I felt like I was pretty well armed, and I really felt like I almost knew Creative Commons. Not really, I didn't. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So the CC certificate program, I enrolled in the September through December 2022, the version for academic librarians, and my library was able to pay for it. It was pretty grateful for this through travel funding. We had some additional professional development funding that year too, not just for librarians, but for library staff too, which was pretty terrific. So I enrolled, and it was an online course through Canvas. It was intense, and I didn't necessarily expect it to be. I really kind of thought this would just be a breeze, but I found myself really studying it hard, and I spent maybe a good day every week for this class. And sometimes it would be like a half a day during the week if I could put it aside from my work duties. Sometimes I would have to go into the weekends and work with it, but it was well worth it. About the only section that I really breezed through was the specific copyright part. Everything else because it really does present copyright from a different angle. I would say that one of the underpinnings that maybe I didn't have a good handle on was international copyright. It's something that I really kind of shied away from. I thought, oh, I don't really need to know this. But one of the documents that was given during the course was the World Intellectual Property Organization document on international copyright. And I really began to see how copyright law all over the world had to work with Creative Commons. So I began to see the commonalities, and it changed how I taught copyright. So the first copyright workshop that I taught on campus after I was finished with the certificate program was a group of Fulbright scholars from all over the world. They were here for education, and I was able to talk about copyright in a better way, something that related it to international copyright law, rather than just sticking to the United States. And I said, well, yeah, we're in the United States, but these are the commonalities. So I thought it really broadened my horizons. Like I said, it was intense, but all those materials are online and available. You can read them on your own, but the course forces you to interact with them, interact with others. There are quizzes that are challenging. Sometimes I take the quizzes 2 or 3 times until I understood everything, and I would look up things. The assignments were practical, and I was really grateful for that. They called it renewable assignments instead of disposable assignments, and I'd never heard that term before. But it really proved to be useful. So I was able to take those assignments and transfer them into what I do on a day-to-day basis. I talk to classes. Sometimes I meet with one-on-one with people. I don't provide legal advice. I'm not an attorney, but I do provide information. I also work pretty closely with our university council. So we give joint workshops sometimes, and sometimes we meet to talk about issues that the university is running into, particularly with grants and ownership and that kind of thing. So all these assignments were really practical. You can go on to the next slide. So on-the-job benefits have been numerous. The international copyright, which I've already mentioned, this is the document that kind of changed my life and opened up my perspective. And when you begin to get into the licenses, you see the license and then you see the legal underpinnings of the license, and just delving into that really broadened my knowledge about copyright. I work with educators at the university who are trying to convert their classes from using commercial textbooks to open educational resources. Sometimes they use free resources that are licensed through our library, but I help them along with that. And we got a grant program funded by the provost 2 years ago for adoption and adaption, and then what we called a super grant for creation. So I was able to help those authors with, think through their licensing. Well, what is this Creative Commons licensing? How would you want to license your works? What are the implications of using it? And I would also point out to them, look how easy it is when you have a CC BY license and you want to adapt something. See how it makes it very easy. So, I mean, you do get questions and you do get people who are skeptical, but I was able to face those questions and give them, a good perspective on it, I thought. I thought especially valuable was the CC adapters license chart for remixing. I show that to people and I say there sometimes when these licenses don't necessarily mix, and this is why CC BY is so convenient for people. So we've talked all these things over. I have a group of veterinary med technicians who are writing a textbook, and they're getting a student illustrator to create illustrations, like really detailed, like medical art illustrations for animal science. And that's been pretty cool. It's an opportunity for her. And I'm like, here's what you can do with this CC license, and these illustrations will live on, they'll be used by others, and it's a way to elevate your profile and elevate the profile of the university too. So I do a lot of work with that. This week, of course, was International Open Access Week, so I was going around wishing everybody happy International Open Access Week all week. We had an internal webinar in conjunction with our research and economic development department. So we talked about open access in general. We talked about Creative Commons licenses. We talked about other publications licenses like the Elsevier license and the ACM license. So I gave them a little bit of perspective on that. And then we talked about, we had a second webinar today about how we fund things. And we do have a small fund for people's APCs, as well as some transformative agreements that we have with OhioLink. So I really feel prepared now that I took this program. It's helped a lot. I would recommend it to anybody. Like I said, I felt like I knew Creative Commons and I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So I had this kind of illusion, and this really cleared up questions that I hadn't even thought of before. So it was invaluable to my career. So happy I did it.
Thank you so much. It's so cool to hear about your other experience, especially with like Copyright X and so on. I took that course too, and I felt like I learned so much after
Yeah.
the cert too. But yeah, it's one person said it's like picking out the corners of our knowledge and different things and knowing
That's
about the different
exactly it.
perspectives.
I think knowledge tends to be like two-dimensional, and this brought it into 3D for me in so many ways.
It's lovely. I think we might be ready for any questions folks have. Let me stop sharing.
I'll get started. Thank you, Cynthia. One of the things when I work with folks across the Midwest, and one of the things that we find happens in a lot of places is once someone's gone through this training on their campus, their level, and I think you alluded to this, their level of comfort with everything just rises, and they feel like they just feel so much more comfortable having very nuanced conversations sometimes with faculty. But we also find that faculty respond by feeling more comfortable and then doing more. Have you seen an uptick in the number of either the number of folks saying, "Hey, I'm not really sure how to do this, but maybe you could help," or the folks who were already doing a little something feeling a little more confident moving deeper into the open ed space?
Yes, there was a faculty member who created some course materials after a grant program that was not funded by the libraries, was funded by somebody else, and she was interested in Creative Commons licensing. And then this is before I took the course, and she kind of backed off of it. She's like, well, I'm afraid somebody is going to take my material and they're going to misuse it, or I'm afraid something is going to happen. There was a lot of fear and I think a lack of understanding. And after I took the course, I was able to articulate to people what this particular license will do, how people will use these materials, how easy you make it for others, how much easier it becomes for you. I've been involved with copyright services, which is not just informational questions, but it's also permissions and clearances. And it's so much easier when you don't need to worry about these permissions. Oh, I can't get a hold of this person, or this
Right.
person won't respond to me. Okay, here this is licensed, and look how easy this makes it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So let's see if we got any questions yet coming in. Oh, we got something. Um, Thanks, Cindy. I haven't done all the homework you did before taking the course. Would you recommend specific readings and resources as a prequel?
I would recommend Kenny Cruz's book. I think that's a terrific book. I read it cover to cover very intensely. I read it as if I were in a course, although I was not in a course. I just read it and I highlighted it. I read the cases that were involved with that. I think that was a very good foundational piece for me because it did give me this, broad perspective of the law. And he does talk about Creative Commons licenses in there, so it's touched on. Um, so I think that's a good foundational piece for it. I really also like the courses, the MOOCs that we had, the first one that I talked about, Copyright for Educators and Librarians. That was good too. But I really found that reading the book made a big difference for me.
I'm not familiar with that book. If you can tell me a little bit more about it, I'll look up a link to share with folks.
Yeah, I wish I'd brought my copy on my bookcase right here, but if
Yeah,
I tried to shuffle
that's
with
all
that
right.
right now, it would be very awkward.
How do you
Yeah, it's
spell
Kenneth
Cruz?
Cruz,
Kenneth
and it's
Cruz.
Copyright for Librarians and Educators, and it's in its fourth edition, and it's got kind of a burgundy color cover with
Okay,
some black trim.
I'll find it. I'll find
Yeah,
it.
find it, and
Okay,
I would
awesome.
recommend it. And, it does cite case law, and then you can go and you can look up those cases. And I find like reading cases, it sounds boring at first, but a lot of times lawyers will put little bits of humor into those court cases, and you're like, oh, I get that. That's funny. And I mean, you don't get that all the time. It's
Well,
not like
right.
reading
Yes.
a comic book or something, but it is it's far from boring. There's a lot that behind it that you can
Yeah.
understand once you begin to understand it.
All right. Well, cool. I
I,
think I've got the citation here, which I will get into the chat momentarily.
I just wanted to jump in if I could. Seconding the drama and the humor in case law, I was shocked to find that to be the case. I just pun intended. But I also wanted to circle back to the question. So I think you have extensive experience, and you've obviously read a lot and learned a lot about copywriting in advance. But
Mhm.
to anybody else who's thinking about taking the certificate courses, there's no need to do any homework in advance. The courses are actually meant for people of all levels of experience. So if you have no understanding in copyright, no understanding of Creative Commons and our licenses, that is completely fine. And we welcome you at that level, and we don't expect you to do any kind of advanced prep for the courses. I will say we have all, as mentioned earlier, we have all of our content CC BY licensed, of course. So you can go on our website and just scroll through some of the readings in advance if you're curious. But again, there's no need or pressure to do any advanced work before the course starts. Also, we offer a facilitator's cheat sheet for participants who may not have 8 hours of time to complete the unit assignment. So there are unit assignments generally every 2 weeks. Um, so we have kind of like, I'm not going to call them shortcuts, but ways that you can still earn full credit for your assignments without putting in so much time. But a lot of people do end up putting in a lot more effort and time because they're making resources that will actually serve them beyond
Right.
the course requirements.
Right.
So
Yeah.
another thing that I was able to do, this is post-course, is I was able to convince our communications and marketing department to give all of, like, we have a series of photos, a Flickr account with all these photos of events over the years. I was able to convince them to CC, to give them a Creative Commons license. I know it was a big victory. The
That's
Flickr
awesome.
version, which is, a 2.0 license, but still I said, this is going to make it easier on everybody. And it will make it easy to showcase the library for people if that's what they want to do. So,
It's amazing.
Right.
yeah.
So let me see, are there any other questions? All right, well, I'll just throw in one more that keeps coming up, and I'm not sure we can answer it here, but I think it's on a lot of people's minds. It certainly was at the Open Ed conference a couple of weeks ago. What are the implications of copyright and artificial intelligence if people are using it? And it gets much more complex. Did you have any initial thoughts there? I'm sure the course is adapting to deal with these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we are integrating webinars around AI and the Commons and the considerations um, that we at Creative Commons are kind of grappling with our community members around how to best support creators and their choices in this era of AI ingestion. And one of the interesting things that I actually heard recently was that we are not in, as we know, we are not in the first era of AI. Or even generative AI. I think the first kind of sort of large scale era of generative AI that we saw was just like massive ingestion of data without any kind of permissions or maybe arguably concern for copyright and so on. And right now we're still waiting for court cases to settle regarding the use of copyrighted content
Right.
or CC licensed content by AI. And in the US, it's the assumption is that it may fall under the category of fair use, which is kind of like a carve out to copyright. It's an exception to copyright, but we don't know yet. And in countries that don't have fair use, we certainly don't know that. I mean, we're waiting for court cases to be resolved. So in this next era where there's a little bit more dialogue with these major AI platforms, not talking about all of them, there are, I think, probably thousands and thousands of AI platforms at this point, but the major ones are starting to enter conversations around permissions and other considerations around data use and reduction and so on. And that's where Creative Commons is really interested in starting to play more of a role in championing creators' choice. So this, and sorry to make this a long-winded response, but
no, it's good. Thank you.
Sure. Over the last year plus, we've been engaged in a number of different community dialogues and workshops and discussions to try to understand the different needs and concerns and challenges that creators have with this new landscape. And we are starting to come up with preference signals, which are a way for those people who want to opt into the system to identify their needs and their desires around their works. So people who want to, say, have their research be used by AI, but only for research purposes, or with their attribution attached, or folks who might not want certain all of the different permutations that creators could want. We're trying to understand them, distill them into what's called preference signals, and see how they can support creators in some domains only as a matter of like social norm, but in other domains, like in Europe, maybe we will be able to create or preference signals will offer something with a little bit more legal teeth aligned to the European area. So I think copyright and AI is still an evolving terrain. So we are eager to see what happens. And because Creative Commons licenses work within copyright, some of the same considerations are at play. There are some other considerations beyond copyright that I think we cannot lose sight of, and that's that's where preference signals.
Yes, yes, so much about ethics and things, and I think you're right. Not only, well, the interface of AI and everything is a rapidly moving target, and so I think it's great to hear some of your thoughts on that and some of the potential ways that those things could go. But I do think I know lots of people have that top of mind. So let's see if there are any other questions. No, it doesn't look like it. Well, hey. Thank you, ladies. This has been fantastic, as always. And I'll just remind everyone who's joined us today, these materials will be available on our website along with the recording, and you will receive an email with a survey that will also give you some links to things. And if you want to, please take a look in the chat. Mary has shared with you there the survey, where you can look for some more of our resources about this contract, and where you can go ahead and subscribe to our listserv and our concurrent enrollment interest list. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
hosting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.